It wasn't until he showed up that I viewed the color red like that. In fact, I've always kind of hated the color red. It was always the one that I associated with the negative: anger, frustration, aggression, destruction. Red, the color of hurt, the color of pain, of betrayal. I always held that dislike for red. I never thought I would ever like this color. But that all changed that day. That day, the 20th of December, frost formed in my nostrils as I tried and failed to keep warm under the blankets, tattered and thin, that were given to me before I was forced out of my homeland. For 18 days I wandered around this snowy landscape. The dead of winter had arrived, and with it came numerous blizzards and freezing afternoons. Lost, cold, and confused, all that ran through me, just as my shallow breaths ran to catch a sliver of warmth that my body would feel as I hyperventilated. I mean, would I rather freeze to death or simply be in danger of passing out? Chances were that I would pass out from the lack of warmth anyway, so I might as well have tried to do something about it. Couldn't really do much though, not like I had a choice. My clothes, thin as the blankets, had also been soaked through from my constant snowfall. My hair, once a clear hair color, was completely brushed over with snowflakes that had refused to melt. I truly believed that I would have died that day if I hadn't met him. I was on track to starving, to freezing, to becoming an untreatable illness. But a pair of loud shouts broke through the howling winds, and when I looked up, I saw what looked like a group of around 10 men, faced with a single man and a cat? In that moment, confusion was present, so much so that the chill in my bones and my soul dissipated. As the group rushed over, the individual that color sparked from his hands, and soon the blazing red overwhelmed my partial vision of encounter. It was all I could see, a bright, saturated, pronounced red, not quite like the deep red of the blood that oozed from the many cuts I had collected over my travels. Not at all like the rust that had grown on my lone weapon. An unfamiliar shade. As the once smug shouts turned to ones of fear, the red fully broke through the rapidly falling snow. All I could do was stare, feet planted into the ground 2 feet below the accumulated snow, both to ground myself and prepare myself for the full sprint I might have to start, depending on the intent of this individual. Within minutes, the shouts had dispersed. As I looked up at the scene, I found that the outline of that individual was the only one left, standing. It became obvious that he had sensed my presence, as told by the pair of black eyes that pierced their way to mine. There was nothing I could do at that minute except wait for my inevitable end. Red, death, torture, persecution, looking back at me. I had no doubts that this man would be my quietus. So, as he turned in my direction, my stinging hand, with what little control I had of it, tightly gripped my broken sword. If I had to, I would fight until my last breath. But would I be able to take him on? Honestly, even now, I'm still unable to. His steps were muted by the storm around us, but I still heard every move, every crunch underneath his feet. He called out to me then, about 20 meters out, asking me if I was with them, if I meant any harm, if I was after the same thing. My mind went blank, and all I was capable of giving was a silent nod. Not that he could see it, just as I thought. After what seemed like receiving no response, he stepped closer. That's when I could really see him. Pink hair, an overcoat, a scarf not placed in a way that would be effective in a storm like the one that day. I would later learn that was not the reason for it at all. I probably shouldn't have, but I let my guard down as I looked at him. He didn't seem dangerous, but the ease that he dealt with those men proved otherwise. He eyed my armed hand and narrowed his gaze as he met my eyes once more. To my own surprise, my solid clutch on my sword loosened and my hand dropped to my side. I don't know if it was curiosity or the fear of his power, but I had decided I would not try to attack this man. My voice was hoarse from the lack of water and erratic air, and my voice cracked when I asked the man what he was doing out in the storm. He simply countered with the same question, adding the repeated first question of my intentions to attack him. I shook my head and turned to walk the other way. Returning to the heart of the storm seemed like a better option compared to staying with this unknown foe. I felt a hand on the back of my shirt, and I was pulled back to my original spot. The look he gave me back then is the same look I am faced with in certain times even now. I get it when I come back from a request, hurt, when I hide any worries that he had always eventually found out, when I try to lie to him and say that everything is fine when he knows I'm hiding something, when I become so frustrated in an argument that I storm off and stop speaking to him until I realize that it won't solve anything. On December 20th, I met the man that would change my life forever. I didn't know it at the time, but I would trust this man with my heart, with my spirit, with my life. But back then, I feared him. He was part of the unknown, and as he would come to know, I am wary of anything unknown. My eyes widened as the red came back into the equation. As he raised his arm, I prepared for the worst. My body froze. I wasn't able to grab onto my sword again. I was left in a state of panic. He didn't strike me. He didn't show any aggression, and to this day, he never has. Instead, he raised his arm to create a small barrier from the storm. That red melted any falling snow before it could touch me, something that I needed before I completely turned to stone. His question, "You're freezing, so why are you out in the middle of a storm?" He still asks me that question whenever I stand outside in the snow every winter, but now his question is accompanied by a mug of hot chocolate and a heavy blanket. I continued to stare at him. I couldn't start to figure out the situation. He waited for an answer for about 2 minutes before he spoke again. "Are you able to find your way back to where you can warm up?" My shocked stare continued. "You're gonna die out here." Eventually, I found my voice and whispered, "Where am I?" "You don't know?" I didn't. The cold had gotten to me, and it had started to affect any awareness I had before entering the storm. It was hard to recognize my surroundings, what I could see at least. I had no idea. I just knew that I was cold, that I was starving, and that I was standing in front of this man and a flying cat. "You're on Mount Hakobe, pretty high up too. You're not equipped to be up this far without being a fire or ice wizard. Are you either?" "I am not. I have always been nothing but a person with mediocre earth magic. Nothing too powerful, nothing too unique." My silence returned. I had become aware of the warmth that now surrounded us. Yes, partially because of the fire that hovered right above my head, but also from this man himself. I now have him beside me on any cold day, and he is sure to provide that same warmth. It does, however, make the sweltering days of summer very, very unpleasant when sleeping next to him. The man let out a breath, small bouts of steam escaping from his mouth, and held out another hand for me to grab. I quickly weighed my options. What would the outcome be of this? Would he actually help? Or would he cause the same harm that those men laying in the snow were faced with?
Natsu, what's with them?
The cat loudly whispered, partly because of the wind. It made hard to hear, partly because Happy, even after the many times I have spoken with him about it, never knew how to properly whisper or keep a secret. I took a quick step back, exiting the haven that this man had created. The cat spoke and flew. They were an odd pair, and they always would be. Everyone around them had gotten used to it, though. It was part of the charm of the duo, one that I loved. Refusing to freeze, I drifted back toward the red flame and looked around the two to check on the group of injured men.
Don't worry about them,
the cat dismissed. But they're assassins. The man cut in. We get them from time to time. They try to hurt you? He laughed then. The same laugh that echoes in my heart. The same laugh that still gives me butterflies whenever I hear it. It comes in many different forms. The nervous laughter from when he breaks something he definitely wasn't supposed to be touching in the first place. The smug laughter from when he defeats an opponent and anything to do with aggravating Gray. But that's another story. The tired laugh from when he insists on staying up late even though he's completely wiped, or when he pushes himself beyond exhaustion in training. The mischievous laughter from when he's very clearly scheming or finding ways to cause chaos, which happens a lot. The goofy laughter, the most common, from basically anything he finds funny or mildly entertaining. Whatever it was always contagious, and was always paired with the grin that I saw for the very first time as he responded. They certainly try, he joked. You're not a bad guy.
No way, lady.
No way, the cat denied.
Natsu's a good guy who stops the bad guys.
You're not gonna hurt me? What? Hey, he complained. I'm helping you now, aren't I? Did you seriously think I was gonna hurt you? And that's when he first saw my own smile. The nervous one, the one that always appeared whenever I was caught or whenever he would say something that made my head spin. I learned a couple of months later that was the moment that started it all. My smile for him, his laugh for me. Do you live here?
Us?
No way. Happy would get too cold, right, Betty?
Aye, sir. We live in Magnolia.
Why don't we take you back there? The man suggested. The guild hall's pretty warm, and Gramps can get you some actual blankets. Guild hall? You're part of a guild? And then I saw Red again, the fairy tale emblem on his right shoulder, the same red one that I would come to have on my left arm.
We're part of fairy tale,
the cat exclaimed. My anxieties pulsed through me, the same ones that came to me in this very moment. Uncertainty, concentration, the need to know that everything will work out. But right now, my anxieties had something that differed from that day. Excitement, elation, eagerness. Starts with anxiety, ends with anxiety, I guess. The good kind this time. After some convincing, I let the man pull me toward the bottom of the mountain, which was something I was truly grateful for, as I'm sure I would have actually frozen away into nothing if I stayed up there any longer. It took until we were about halfway to the guild hall for my mind to shake the deliberating chill that had sunk its claws into me. I was faced with a rather large building that held the infamous emblem above the entrance. I felt a gentle push in my back,
Well, you going in?
I looked to the stranger for reassurance. One I still hadn't decided if I should trust, but took my own step forward and slowly opened the doors. Red came flashing in front of me in an instant. Not knowing why he had activated his flames, my startled flinch clouded me from seeing the pile of ash that resulted from him burning the chair that had been launched toward the door. So, I guess you could say that he saved me twice that day. But I think I wouldn't really have minded a slight concussion over a frozen death. That was the day I had learned the importance of reflexes around fairy tale wizards, and believe me, I acquired very fast reflexes. I wandered, well, more like was guided over to the bar, where I met Master Makarov, who, to this day, insists that I should drop the formalities. But to be honest, I continue to do it sometimes, just to get under his nerves as payback for the many lectures I had to endure on a certain fire wizard's behalf when he wasn't around to hear it for himself. For the first time, after brief introductions, my sleeve was grabbed once more, and my feet followed the man's shadow over toward what would be the table that had a permanent seating reservation for our small but seemingly ever-growing group. And that brings us to right now, at that same spot. Natsu nervously started.
Are you gonna answer, or...
Can you ask again?
Huh?
Ask me again.
I already asked you twice.
I gave him my best smile and teased. Just one more time. He huffed, but his smile matched mine, and he did, in fact, one more time ask.
Will you marry me?
As I said earlier, my nerves were at an all-time high, but I knew that this was one thing in that unknown category that I would happily accept as something that I liked. Well, I guess liked would be an understatement, don't you think? Because there was one thing that would never have been unknown. My love for Natsu would never waver, would never be something unknown or scary, because we had gone through so much in these 4 years, and I couldn't wait for more. Yeah, I whispered. Immediately I was picked up and brought in for a hug that I could never get tired of, and that warmth from that first day greeted me as he held me. Good thing it was only still April, right? Never got your name. My name is Happy. I'm Natsu. Who are you? YN. Oh, and one more thing. The ring was red, but you probably could have guessed that one, right?